The atmosphere on the Good Morning America set was electric, brimming with the usual polished calm of a live national broadcast. Cameras rolled, makeup artists retouched with feather-light brushes, and production assistants whispered into earpieces. Denzel Washington had arrived 20 minutes early, like the seasoned professional he was. The energy among the crew instantly shifted when he walked in, warm greetings, back pats, even a few selfies with staffers. It was supposed to be a smooth segment, a feel-good sit-down. But behind the glass smiles and prepped cue cards, something was off. The plan was simple. Denzel would talk about his upcoming historical epic Sons of Valor, a film chronicling the life of an unsung Black Union Army general. There was buzz around the Oscar potential already. Add to that Denzel's quietly powerful philanthropic work in underserved communities, and it was the kind of interview producers love: inspiration, art, humanity. George Stephanopoulos, the show's ever-composed co-anchor, had done thousands of interviews. But this morning, he had a different edge. He had reportedly insisted on handling the segment personally, despite producers suggesting a more entertainment-oriented host. George said it was about depth and integrity. No one questioned him. The interview started smoothly. Denzel greeted George with his trademark cool and calm, flashing that familiar smile. He spoke passionately about the film, the forgotten history it uncovered, and why he felt compelled to produce it himself. He talked about young boys in Compton and Detroit who needed stories of greatness, not just struggle. The audience was captivated, but at the 5-minute mark, everything shifted. George leaned forward in his chair. His tone changed. "Denzel," he said, smoothing the papers in front of him, "you've been vocal in the past about media bias and manipulation." Denzel's eyes narrowed just slightly. George continued, "Last year, you made a statement that, if you don't read the news, you're uninformed, and if you do read the news, you're misinformed. Many felt that was a dangerous oversimplification in today's climate. Would you care to clarify what you meant?" A quiet tension fell over the set. Crew members glanced at one another behind the cameras. That quote had sparked backlash a year ago, and it had been clear through Denzel's team that he didn't want to discuss it. His publicist, sitting just out of frame, visibly tensed. Denzel paused. He adjusted his cufflink slowly, looked at George, then smiled, but it was no longer the easy grin from earlier. "George," he said in a calm, razor-sharp tone, "I thought we were here to talk about Sons of Valor and the work I'm doing in schools across the country. Not to rehash a soundbite that got twisted by people with no interest in truth." George didn't flinch. "It's all part of the public discourse," he replied. "And some might argue that as a public figure, especially one admired for his insight, you have a responsibility to." "To what?" Denzel cut in, his voice rising slightly. "To say what you want me to say, or to fit into the version of me that makes people comfortable." An audible gasp rose from the studio audience. The live delay cut to commercial seconds later, but the damage was done. Behind the scenes, Denzel stood from his chair, removed his mic, and turned to the producers. "You brought me here under false pretenses," he said. "I don't play those games." George remained seated, expression unreadable. Producers scrambled. Security and PR reps rushed toward the stage. Within minutes, word had spread across the network floor: Denzel had been asked to leave the set. And as he walked toward the exit, still composed, still towering, he turned back just once. And said, loud enough for the stunned crew to hear, "You don't invite a man to your house just to disrespect him." Backstage at Good Morning America, the atmosphere had shifted from orderly professionalism to controlled chaos. Denzel Washington, having just walked off set after the tense exchange with George Stephanopoulos, was surrounded by a mix of handlers, show producers, and stunned crew members. Some tried to calm him down, others just watched in stunned silence, unsure of what had just unfolded live on national television. George followed him down the hallway. His voice was cool, but there was a sharpness to it now, a quiet defensiveness behind his polished exterior. "Denzel," George called, keeping his distance, "you didn't need to make that personal." Denzel stopped walking. He slowly turned around, facing him directly. The hall fell quiet. Even the assistants stopped typing on their phones. "It wasn't personal," Denzel said evenly. "It was about principle. You brought me on your show, asked for a conversation, then set a trap. That's not journalism, George. That's theater." George stiffened. "You made yourself a political figure the moment you started giving speeches about the media. Don't act surprised when someone asks you about it." "I gave those speeches because no one else was," Denzel replied. Because there are people out there struggling to know what's real. And they look to people like you to tell the truth, not twist narratives for ratings. A junior producer appeared between them. "Gentlemen," she said nervously, "we really need to get Mr. Washington to his car." But neither man moved. George's expression shifted. "You came in here acting like you're above it all. But let's be honest, you knew exactly what you were doing. You want to be seen as this fearless truth teller, but you don't like being challenged." Denzel laughed. It wasn't bitter, it was quiet, tired. "I've been challenged my whole life, George," he said. "On the streets of Mount Vernon. In Hollywood rooms where I was the only black man. I've never backed down from a challenge. But what I don't tolerate is dishonesty disguised as journalism." Just then, a senior producer approached. Her face was pale. "Mr. Washington," she said, "we understand if you don't want to return. We sincerely apologize for how that segment unfolded. It wasn't supposed to." Denzel held up a hand. "It's done. I said what I had to say." He walked toward the exit, brushing past crew and cameras, pausing only once, to look at a young intern who stood there, wide-eyed. Denzel gave her a small nod, like he was reassuring her that standing your ground was never the wrong move. By the time he stepped into the black SUV waiting outside, Twitter had already exploded. Clips from the segment were everywhere. Headlines from every major outlet read, "Denzel vs. George. Live TV Showdown rocks, GMA, Washington walks out," and the most viral one, "You don't invite a man to your house just to disrespect him." Within hours, #Denzel speaks and #Team Washington were trending worldwide. Fans praised his grace under fire. Others debated whether George had overstepped. Celebrities began chiming in. Ava DuVernay tweeted, "Denzel handled that like a king. Unshakable." Meanwhile, other journalists quietly acknowledged the elephant in the room. Had George violated journalistic ethics by ambushing his guest? ABC issued a vague statement later that evening. "We regret that this morning's segment took an unexpected turn. We hold the utmost respect for Mr. Washington and his contributions to society and cinema." But Denzel didn't respond publicly. He flew out to Atlanta the same evening to attend a fundraiser for youth arts programs, where he smiled for photos and gave no interviews. When asked by a volunteer how he felt about the morning's events, Denzel simply said, "Sometimes the truth makes people uncomfortable. And that's exactly why it has to be told."